Welcome back to the HEART program. HEART is designed to help high school students develop preventative mental wellness skills and foster social emotional learning. In this session, we'll be introducing two important concepts: the importance of stress and how to take advantage of it. So let's get started. Back in the late 1980s, researchers built a closed complex in Arizona called the Biosphere 2. Inside this experimental environment, the researchers collected everything they thought they needed to run a contained ecosystem, including a variety of plants, animals, and nutrients. They developed ways to maintain oxygen, water, and a food supply to support people living inside the dome for 2 years. It was an experiment, so of course it raised some questions along the way. One interesting case was that the trees in the biosphere grew quickly, but the branches would break off before the tree had a chance to mature and reproduce. Why was this? Unlike the real world, inside the biosphere there was no wind, so the trees didn't develop the strength to withstand natural stressors, including the weight of their own branches. It wasn't the stress of wind that hurt the trees, but rather the lack of stress that made the trees grow up too weak to support their own weight. The importance of stress. Do you think of stress as bad for you, toxic, something to be avoided, or an indicator that something is wrong with your life? Researchers and the media used to promote the message that stress is harmful to our health, but hundreds of more recent studies on stress tell us a different story. As Stanford professor Kelly McGonigal sums it up, stress is destructive until the moment we believe it isn't. How is this even possible? Stress is a biological mechanism that helps us engage with and adapt to our lives. It's part of the evolutionary process for us, both as a species and as individuals. In our earlier session on stress physiology and mindfulness, we talked about what happens in our bodies when we're stressed. Our bodies activate the emergency response, called fight-flight, to physically prepare us for action. And when the stressor goes away, the rest and digest response takes over and we calm down again. But that's not the whole story. It turns out fight-flight isn't the only stress response we have. It doesn't make sense that being afraid for our lives is the only reaction we can experience when we're stressed, because our logical brains recognize that stressful situations are different. In fact, researchers from Yale, Columbia, Stanford, and many other major institutions have found that our mindset about stress allows us to produce the brain chemistry we need to rise to the challenge. It gives us the resources to learn better, encourages us to build and draw on our support networks, and develops resilience to the stress we experience. When we're stressed, our bodies release an assortment of chemicals that initiate various physiological responses. The fight-flight response is what happens when our emergency systems prepare our bodies for physical action. When we rise to the challenge, we're using our excite-delight response to improve our performance. If we choose to see the challenge as a way to look beyond ourselves, to connect with and help other people, our tend and befriend response kicks in to improve our emotional intelligence and our social bonds. And when we take a growth mindset by viewing the challenge as a learning opportunity, our resilience response protects our hearts and helps us recover from injury. These are not mutually exclusive responses. We can engage in any and all of these at the same time to actively harness the benefits that come from stress. The key to taking advantage of stress lies in how we think about the situation. The choice is up to you, and sometimes it's a really difficult one. It can feel easier to avoid or ignore the stressor because dealing with it is hard or uncomfortable. The thing is, being uncomfortable is not actually bad, even if it feels that way. Being uncomfortable is a call to action. It pushes us to evolve. It's our body's way of telling us we need to learn and practice the skills to get better at handling situations that make us uncomfortable. Perhaps you're familiar with the expression, growth happens on the edges of our comfort zones. If we can't accept that discomfort, it's really hard to grow. It turns out being okay with being uncomfortable is an important skill that we humans have to develop. You can do this using your new superpowers of breath and choice. The next time you're feeling stressed, use your superpower of breath to manage your stress response so it doesn't feel so overwhelming. But don't stop there. Use your mindfulness skills to decide if the situation is really an emergency, or if it's more useful to choose a different mindset about the stress and let your body and brain take advantage of your built-in stress management features. Let's review what we just covered. We talked about the importance of stress for our personal growth and how to take advantage of it using our superpowers of breath and choice. Thanks for engaging, and see you next time.